I'm on night 5, 6, and 7 of like zero sleep. But the nights start becoming terror, basically. What it felt like was I started having what felt like to me just complete night-long panic attacks, basically. Like all night long, basically, like every second just like struggling to like breathe and just to, it's really hard to describe. So I'm a little bit, I'm like very little sleep over the last 10 days, and then I'm getting more alarming stuff, all the typical stuff, like the night coming, and oh no, like wondering, like little thoughts in the back of my mind, like, okay, the sun's setting, am I gonna be tired tonight? Am I gonna sleep tonight? I was just laughing out loud because I couldn't believe that finally there was someone addressing like this situation in a world where, healthcare professionals and psychology, and just to see that like there was this approach and being sort of dispensed online through the videos and stuff, I was just like, thank God. And so then I reached out to you, and when you go through a intense experience and you feel like you found the answer or whatever, it just becomes like your duty to be like, or at least for me, I just felt like, well, if I have some insight into this cause of suffering, then you can't just like walk away knowing there's all these people out there having an experience of what is happening to me, because there's just this intense why. So if I have any capacity to talk to someone and say, this is why, or this is how, then like it or not, that's my karma or my duty for the rest.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Curtis with us. Welcome, Curtis. So I'm really excited about this episode because I know a little bit about your story, but actually quite little. I know that you've been helping people on Reddit. I know that's where you heard about us, but as opposed to most of our guests, I think you kind of found your way out of the sleep struggle independently of like, our work and what we do. So without going further into this, just tell us in your words, Curtis, how did you start having trouble sleeping?
Okay. Well, the event that catalyzed sort of my identification with insomnia, it started at a Vipassana retreat, actually. For those that don't know, Vipassana it's a 10-day meditation retreat that's free for anyone to experience, and it's a excuse me.
Is it related to any form of philosophy, like yogic philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, or anything like that?
Yeah, it's very Buddhist. They explain it and they offer it as a non-denominational, like non-religious offering to humanity, but it's very much Buddhist.
I see. And does it include some lectures as well as kind of other activities, or what is it like?
Yeah, so basically it's mainly it's a meditation technique that they give you. It's typically a hall of people, 20 to 50 people in attendance. And once they give you the meditation technique, most days are spent meditating all day, every day, no talking and stuff like this. So
is this, sorry to interrupt, but is this like, many of us have heard of like a silent retreat? Is this something similar to that, or is this a version of a silent retreat?
Silent retreat. It's no talking, and you're basically receiving instruction. It's like a one-way dialogue. You receive instruction from the teacher, and then you just kind of go on your journey as they guide you through in a group setting, in a group context.
Yeah. Wow. And so you were in this retreat. When was it? What year or how long
This
ago?
was 2016, 2017, actually, the new year going into
Got
2017.
it. And
Yes.
so, yeah, you were there, and that's kind of when you first started having kind of insomnia related thoughts or whatnot, identifying with this a bit. But yeah, what happened?
So basically, the first day, so you get there, you arrive, they do sort of an introduction, and they explain, okay, you're about to do this thing. Everyone sort of settles in. And then they say, okay, well, tomorrow is a big day. Get some sleep, everybody. And so you go into a dormitory style sleeping arrangement, which is basically like no curtains, no sort of partitioned rooms or anything like that. You're basically shacking up in a shared sleeping situation with a bunch of people. And the whole thing about the Vipassana retreat is there's no distractions. There's no sort of reading or TV or internet or anything like this. That I mean, they're pretty strict, and they're just like no journals even. They're basically like, we want you to go as deep as you possibly can into this meditation practice, and so we don't want any no music, nothing, no distractions. So anyhow, they kind of give you the spiel, and they say it's going to be a big day tomorrow. Get some sleep. They let you go at about 8 p.m. and the idea is like lights out at 9 p.m. And the bell, ding ding ding, that's 4 a.m. So that's basically the schedule for the entirety of the Vipassana experiences. Um, Basically, sleep 9 to 4 a.m. and then you wake up and you'll do like an hour meditation break, another hour meditation break, light breakfast break, meditation break, and then for the next 10 days it's basically like meditation and sleep.
Wow. Yeah. And did you, I'm guessing or I'm thinking that either the first night or one of the first nights you had some struggle with sleep, or?
Yes. So basically, when you're unprepared for this kind of thing, you're you're it's like 9 p.m., right? And so let's say my schedule is like 1 a.m. That's what I'm used to. Like I'm just like, whoa, what is this 9 p.m., you know? I guess I'll lay down, even though that's not typically when I would try to start sleeping. Um, so that, I mean, and this is all I'm able to like reconstruct in retrospect. Like as this is happening, I don't know what I'm in for, right? So this is day one, and I'm basically like 9 p.m. lights out. I go to try to lay down, and an hour, two, three go by, and I'm in this room, right, with people around me, like snoring over here, and breathing heavily over here, and tossing and turning over there, and you know, basically, I had my first sort of like the night went by, and I'm sitting there going, huh, I'm finding it difficult to fall asleep here. And then you're basically, anyway, it was just night one, not that big of a deal. The bell rings, it's 4 a.m. Time to wake up and start meditating. That was day one. So,
And yeah, and you do you remember, like, do you think you were awake the whole night, or do you think you slept a little bit, or?
awake whole night, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, okay, the bell rings, you start your day. Are you at that point like ruminating or thinking about what happened, or not really? Are you
No,
thinking more like,
nothing has happened that yeah in that regard of like alarm kind of going off. Basically just like, oh man, I didn't sleep last night. Oh well, good thing I don't have much responsibility today other than sort of sitting there and receiving this meditation technique, and so no
yeah,
big deal at this point, right? So I go through that day, um, receive the meditation technique, start meditating, etc. And then it's nighttime again, 8 p.m. And mind you, this is no talking the whole time. Like you're a person amongst people, you know, but you're not dialogue, you're not talking. They even discourage like eye contact or even something as simple as whistling. um,
Mm.
so anyway, silent, I'm sitting here, no, I'm ready to go. Like this is like I came here for this reason to do this 10-day meditation retreat. So I'm pretty much not thinking about not sleeping the night before. I'm just thinking about being present and receiving this instruction.
Yes. And my I think what I'm thinking here is like what happens next. Is it like the next night the same thing happens, or maybe my question to you will be more like, when did it's those alarm bells start going off,
Okay,
and
well, let's fast forward a little bit, and we'll be like, okay, night two, we have here I go, like time to sleep. Like, so I guess this is probably where thoughts started coming, like a slight sleep pressure kind of beginning, because it's kind of like this assumption, like, well, since I didn't sleep last night, I should just like, boom, conk out, and I'll be, you know, completely out all night because like I didn't sleep a wink last night, so I must be really tired, right? And feeling tired throughout the day, right? So then, same thing, 9 o'clock, and lay down. Here I go, off to sleep, right? You know, hour goes by, 2 hours goes by, same sort of stuff, like snoring guy over here and like tossing and turning person over here. And just basically, I think this day two probably was when the sort of like noticing that other people were sleeping and I wasn't, maybe. And I think it's still all subconscious at this point, like, but something is building, right? So that night, I mean, I might have dozed off. It's hard to say at this point whether I was getting a little 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there kind of thing. But what it felt like to me was another night of no sleep. So then it's like day two. It's like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit tired, but these meditation practices aren't very, strenuous. So like I can handle this kind of thing. Day two, meditating all day. Night night two or night three, or like, so now things start getting blurry, right? um so yeah, basically night after night I was not sleeping, and I think that around night three or four is when things shifted from, like night one was sort of like a curiosity of like, oh wow, that's odd, I didn't sleep at all, to like having some concerns rise to the surface and not being able to talk to anybody about it. So this whole silence thing was, I couldn't compare notes. I couldn't like, hey, what's your experience, person next to me or whatever. Like you don't get to talk to the people around you. So I'm having this sort of internal, very isolated kind of experience of like, I wonder if anyone else here isn't sleeping as I'm not, and these kinds of things. So basically, my concerns started building around maybe night three or four.
yeah.
Um, and
And
what's
did
interesting?
you? Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes. No, tell me. You were just about to say something interesting. Yeah.
okay, well, the Goenka guy, the guy who's sort of considered to be responsible for this most recent manifestation of the Buddhist teachings that are dispensed through the Vipassana centers and whatnot. He actually addresses lack of sleep in his discourses. So the thing that you're allowed to sort of uh, there's like these videos of the Goenka guy, and he'll basically explain like, oh, you're probably having this experience and you're probably having that experience. So you get this sort of one-way transmission as you're having your experience through video. Like they have a TV on and they play him talk because he's not alive anymore. And so anyway, he addresses lack of, he's like, well, since you're meditating all the time, if sleep goes away, just that can be normal, And so I'm getting this sort of like, okay, maybe it's this meditation thing, right? So That's where I'm
I
at around day 4 or 5.
got it. So in some way, maybe some reassurance there, normalizing the experience to some degree. Uh, but yeah, do you the remainder of the retreat, does it become like similar to maybe like the night 3, 4, or do things escalate or do they stay the same? What's the rest of the retreat like?
Well, yeah, basically things escalate because, it's slightly reassuring to get this kind of like, if you stop sleeping, that's okay, kind of from the instructor. But I don't know, when night 5 and night 6 and night 7, this is when things started escalating, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I must have slept like maybe 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, because it's really hard to believe that I didn't get any sleep. But what my experience felt like was like I'm on night 5, 6, and 7 of like zero sleep,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And like the days are, I can get through them because it's just basically I'm sitting there and I'm meditating and this sort of thing. But the nights start becoming terror, basically. What it felt like was I started having what felt like to me just complete night long panic attacks, basically. Like
Mm,
all night long, basically, like every second just like struggling to like breathe and just to, it's really hard to describe. But I'm
yeah,
sure that a lot of people who have struggled with these kinds of things have had this kind of
yeah,
panic rise, this sort of I was basically like I've acquainted with a few of your videos, and so that I would basically hyper arousal is what's happening, or
yeah.
a lot of cortisol in the body or adrenaline or something like that. Because I'm very concerned about what happened to sleep. I around night 7 or 8 of this experience.
Now, do you complete the retreat?
I do, because like I have this personality type that's like I think it was probably the way I was raised. Like my mom wouldn't ever let me like not go to school or whatever, even when I felt sick. It was just like it was always like you finish the thing you start, like
Right.
you thing like you got to. And I'm there like thinking like, okay, when's the next time I'm going to do this like 10-day retreat? And they highly encourage staying till the end. They're basically that's actually another thing that Goenka says in his Discord is basically like don't don't leave early because this is it's a package thing, and you got to go through the entirety to receive the benefits of what you're receiving. So and then also just basically like some ego, maybe like I gotta do this thing, like I gotta get to the end of it, and so I had all this kind of like, yeah, basically in retrospect I could have left day 4 or 5, and I probably should have. But when you're in this sort of altered state of the meditation and the Vipassana, and you're receiving these instructions, it sort of takes over, and your
Yeah.
whole kind of like perception of yourself as a autonomous agent kind of starts leaving. I mean,
No, no, it totally makes sense. And now you complete it, and in most of the stories that we share on our channel, like they tend to start like similarly in a sense that there's something different happening in our lives. In your case, for example, you're told to go to bed like way earlier, but for some reason we have a night where we don't sleep much, and then eventually that starts to be end up on the radar, like, oh, I didn't sleep, what's wrong? And we think about it, and then we don't sleep, etc., etc. But what tends to be one of the next step is what we call these sleep efforts, when we do things to try to make ourselves sleep, like put in the blackout curtains or earplugs or stop drinking coffee or trying supplements and things of that nature. When you return from the retreat, did anything like that happen?
oh yes, it did.
Yes.
So, yeah, so the retreat is the catalyst, right, to a greater insomnia journey, which then was like, 5, 6, 7 years. Um, so let's just skip forward to like now here I am identifying as an insomniac or having continuing like, so basically as I'm leaving the retreat, um, I'm like, I talk to the people at the end, you know, because then they allow you to talk. And then extra alarming things like one person, how'd you sleep? You know, oh, I slept like a rock the whole time. Oh my God. You know, just like all this stuff. I was so tired. I couldn't stay awake. Just like, okay. And I shared with somebody, like, I don't think I slept the entire time. He's looking at me like, wow, that's a problem, man. You got to get yourself to the hospital. I'm like, oh, shoot, you know? So I'm a little bit, you know, I'm like very little sleep over the last 10 days, and then I'm getting more alarming stuff. And so then, yeah, like then instead of sort of like, okay, I'm out of here, like time to live my life as I remember, then I'm just sort of like, okay, I'm out of here. And then I'm still like day 11, day 12, day 13. I'm still having this sort of like all the typical stuff, like the night coming and oh no, you know, like wondering, like little thoughts in the back of my mind, like, okay, the sun's setting, you know, am I gonna be tired tonight? Am I gonna sleep tonight? And just, you know, I developed these new relationships to the sunset, to, you know, to the sleep process. It just stuck with me, you know. And so there I was, like emerging from this retreat with a thing to deal with that I had that um,
That
hadn't
you
been
had to
this
like
strong.
fix, or yeah. And and yeah, what steps do you take now that you're back in your home environment to sort of try to fix this?
Right. So I went through the typical, like, you know, friends and family, kind of like, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping. You guys, it's a really hard experience. What do you recommend? Like, can anyone help me, basically? And, you know, I get the valerian, melatonin, you know, like all this sort of like, oh, you just need some warm milk. Even the guy, like, I was sort of like panicking, and I managed, like, during the retreat, I managed to like talk to one of the instructors, and he's like basically like, oh, just drink some warm milk, go back to bed, you're freaking out for no reason, like just relax. And so I get your typical kind of like sleep hygiene sort of like, and then I start, you know, doing research. And so that leads me down like the other sleep hygiene stuff. Like then I mean, so basically the next few months now is what I'm talking about post retreat, is like melatonin, valerian, all that stuff. Nothing works, and then you get into the deeper layers, like the blue blocking glasses, the, you know, EMFs, the like turn the electricity off at night, the like. I mean, I was going so far as to like, is there like electricity in the wall behind my bed? I'm gonna build like a Faraday cage to like block. I mean, I'm just like going down all these roads and still having sleepless nights and really poor sleep nights.
Yeah.
And yeah, just, and then someone else is like, oh, I've got the solution, I've got the solution, you just need to like eat steak and drink wine and you get all heavy and then watch a movie and then you'll fall asleep. And so I just go down this road of just like every single thing that people recommend, either friends and family or the internet. I'm trying it all, and I'm still
Yeah.
struggling for 4 hours a night if I'm lucky.
And do you at some point go to talk to a doctor?
Yeah, and then there's the psychologists and the medical natural. I went to a naturopath. So I went to a naturopath, and he's like, "Okay, it's the vitamin B12." And so then I'm like, "Okay, I believe you. It must be the vitamin B12." So then like start receiving vitamin B12 injections, and it feels like the first night I sleep or whatever, and I'm like, I found it, the answer. It's vitamin B12 this whole time. Oh, that's all I needed. And so like 2 or 3 nights go by, and something like the placebo effect or something just like tells me like, you're good now. And then I have another sleepless night, and then it's like, oh no, the vitamin B12 isn't working anymore, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah, we call it, for anyone who's maybe new to the channel, like we call that delegation, when we we try something and our thought becomes, oh, good, now I don't have to do anything because this B12 will take care of sleep for me, which essentially makes us like effortless. We're no longer trying to sleep, and then it happens by itself, which we don't realize, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go down that path, and yeah, I'm just gonna, you know, you painted a very very strong picture, very very clear picture of what's happening here, and you're trying all these things, still struggling, and I'm just gonna ask kind of like open-ended question here about like what would you say is kind of the next thing that happens on your journey?
Um, well, it basically we're talking like years now, and I'm doing therapy because I figure like, okay, maybe it's psychological, and so I'm trying multiple therapists, and you know, they weren't much help either. And so at the time, I mean, in retrospect, I'm able to know like, okay, these well-meaning people don't have any idea what this is, including the naturopath with the B12, like both therapists that I pursued. You know, they're basically, oh, tell me about your childhood, et cetera, like things like this, and it, I, you know, as someone, I mean, when I find this channel, I'm just like, I see the story of all the insomniacs, and it's just like, it's a, it's so, it's so apparent that everybody's like that if you know you know and if you don't you don't, and so
Right.
all the friends and the family and all the psychologists and stuff, they're well-meaning people who just have no clue what you're going through, and they can't and even when you try to describe, you try, you know, even my primary partner, my wife, like if I try to say like, look, I feel so scared and this is awful, and they're just kind of like, yeah, that must be tough, you know. But I firmly believe that unless you have experienced this, that there's no there's no way that anyone could ever know that you just don't. And so I don't remember what your question was. I sort of
No,
changed.
no, I think you take us that was very valuable, everything you said, but basically I would say you answered it very nicely because you mentioned that now you also pursued like therapy that really wasn't helpful, but we you explained very clearly and very nicely how you're now living a life that is very much consumed by thinking about like sleep and how to fix sleep and doing things to try to fix it, et cetera, et cetera. I would say my question would be like, when was there any change towards like, oh, things became even worse, or change as in kind of now I started to understand what was happening? Like, what's kind of the next change, if you will, in your story?
Right. Um, so yeah, basically focusing on externals for like probably several years, um, and you know, on and off. Like I maybe like sleep fine for like a week or two, and then struggle for a week or two. But it basically was just kind of like always there in my experience, like you know, sun is setting or whatever. Oh, am I going to sleep tonight? These kind of thoughts, these kind of concerns. And basically, I would say the next step had to do with just years going by. And I think that with the years going by, uh, sort of some of the the emergency catastrophic feeling of things just become normalized, and so um, just with the simple passage of time, and it's interesting. I've helped other people in person and online with these things, and what my mom, for whatever reason, she slept great her whole life, like 9 hours a night with like afternoon naps, like her entire life. She got a UTI, like a urinary tract infection, and then all of a sudden she found herself not sleeping at night, and I'm sitting there coaching her and seeing every single thing that I went through right there in my face, like seeing her reaching for the white noise and reaching for the, oh, if I just take, you know, if I take a melatonin, two magnesiums, some valerian, put on the white noise and the blue blocking glasses, you know, all this stuff, then I can sleep. And then I'm sitting there and I'm able to see I'm not the person now going through it. I'm able to observe someone else and just go, And from that vantage point, you're just like, okay, my mom never thought about sleep her entire life, and now she thinks she needs to perform all these tasks in order to do this, and she's up all night freaking out. And it's just like, when you see it from that perspective, from an outside perspective, you're like, oh, it's totally clear. And then so then I became sort of her coach, and basically like, it doesn't feel like it right now, but through the passage of time, this seemingly catastrophic situation that you're feeling right now will dissipate, and you'll find yourself sleeping. It could be a month from now or 3 months from now, but don't worry, because like, it's just a little emergence and it's gonna settle down. And so I was basically like her coach. And then I don't know, I got on Reddit and found the insomnia thread there, and saw, and then I started seeing the patterns. So basically I was seeing like all these people that are just like, what can I take? Is it like if I take the Ambien, or should I take the I forget what it's called, the Thorazazone or something.
Oh, yeah, trazodone, yes.
And all these kind of things, like, oh, and then, oh no, that didn't work for me, and oh, nothing works for me, or like, and just seeing these people and just kind of starting to see the pattern of how these people are just basically like, maybe this thing, or maybe that thing, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's that, and then so all the stuff. And so then, just starting through my experience with my mom and the Reddit online, just starting to see like the futility of all these people grasping for solutions, and recognizing like, they're not achieving their goals. Like, they're doing all these behaviors, but they're still all complaining about being insomniacs. And so
Yeah.
there's sort of this kind of like this thing that started becoming clear within me, was trying to fix this is what's causing it.
Exactly right.
I'm like, whoa. So then I start coaching people in that sort of way. And then how I found you, because at this point in the last couple of years, like, yeah, I'll have trouble sleeping sometimes, but I don't give it much thought, or I don't start freaking out and panicking about it. But someone had said, hey, have you heard of Daniel and the coach school and all this kind of stuff? And so then I came and I checked it out, and I just, I watched a couple of videos, and I just started laughing out loud, because I was just like, somebody figured it out. Like I went through like a 5-6 year journey, and I don't think this kind of information was available back then too, like on the internet or whatever.
Our channel is about 5 years old.
Yeah, so that at the time I wouldn't have had those resources, but I was just laughing out loud, because I couldn't believe that finally there was someone addressing like this situation. And it, in a world where, healthcare professionals and psychology and medical establishment, like, people are trying to get a hold on this, because it is a problem. People, having trouble sleeping is an issue, but just to see that like there was this approach, and being sort of dispensed online through the videos and stuff, I was just like, thank God. And so then I reached out to you, and here we are.
Yeah. Oh, that's no, I can picture you watching the videos and kind of having that moment, laughing out loud, and seeing like, everything that you had seen yourself, seeing that somebody else have seen that too, and it's out there. I can sense that it was like a relief to that, knowing that it is out there and somebody else is trying to help, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I was going to ask you, maybe just a little comment for people in the audience, that when you shared how like after some years, things somehow with passage of time got easier. And when I heard that, in my mind, it kind of becomes like, sometimes, when in the beginning of the struggle, it's often very catastrophic. We think that if I don't sleep tonight, then something terrible is going to happen. And then we don't sleep, and then we think, oh no, it happened. I didn't sleep, and then we become riled up, and et cetera, et cetera. But after some passage of time, what can happen is we can sort of at least consciously realize that I've had many, many nights where I didn't sleep and nothing actually did happen. I'm still here, still breathing, still alive. And then that fear of not sleeping can somehow kind of dissipate over time. Is that somehow how you saw it for you? Like that's maybe how it got easier for you?
Yeah, it did get easier. There were sort of like in the beginning, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, there would be like, I would play these little games in my head. So I want to address like these kind of like games that you can play when you're measuring things and then you're determining whether that's good or bad. You're basically like, and you can, it's arbitrary. You could say like, if I don't sleep 6 hours a night, it's a big deal. Or if I don't sleep four, it's a big deal. Or if I don't sleep at all, it's a big deal. But the way my stories were working were like, the real catastrophic was like, it would always be like night two or night three of no sleep when I'd say, okay, this is a really big problem. Um, that and so anyway, I would survive those spells. Like these spells would come sometimes, and it would, instead of like maybe sleeping half a night, like because I had so many nights which were like, 4 in the morning was kind of the cutoff. It was always like, I measure all night long. I'm like, okay, it's midnight. That means that like it's not 4 in the morning yet, or like I made 4 a.m. like the magical you're gonna surrender and fall asleep time, and then while secretly hoping that it would happen before then, but usually wouldn't. But I would just basically be like, oh well, it's still only 1 a.m. right now, and so just basically spending the night like
Like
tracking.
creating these magical numbers and special numbers and things of that nature, right?
Yeah. So basically, the catastrophic thing, people can create the catastrophe with whatever story they want to overlay on their experience. And so for someone, it might be like, oh no, I only slept 4 hours, and someone else it might be like 2 days, and or whatever. But then what tends to happen is then that amplifies your concerns, and it all spirals out of control. And so
Yeah.
the measuring and the like, the monitoring and the sort of like creating these goals of like, oh, I better sleep tonight, or I better get at least X hours otherwise, or like all this kind of stuff. So yeah, over time, to answer your question, like as the years went by, I just developed all these strategies, these stories to cope with whatever was or wasn't happening in terms of sleep. So, but I started getting better at being like, okay, well, it's just going to be another sleepless night, I guess. And so I guess I'll just lay here, and we know what that feels like. It's not going to be fun tomorrow, but I'll make it through because I know I've gone. I mean, with the Vipassana thing, it felt like 10 days no sleep. I mean, a lot of people would think that's crazy. Like you can't even do that. Like you'll die or whatever. But like I felt like that's what happened to me. But
Yeah.
anyway, then it would be like 3 days without sleep or 4 days without sleep, and that was always alarming and a problem. But like, yeah, as the years went by, then pretty soon it was just like, all right, here we go. It seems like it's going to be a sleepless night, and then like most of the time it would be like, I'd fall asleep at like 4 in the morning. That was a usual kind of thing. For some reason, 4 a.m. I would have this like, oh no, it's 1 a.m. It's 2 a.m. kind of darn kind of moments. But then I would usually kind of like 4 to 8 and get like 4 hours. And then, I'd call those half day nights. I'd be like, okay, well, that was a half night. And, half nights are better than 0 nights. And like, and so just like basically all these strategies and these stories in order to like, yeah, come up, normalize to just live with like a seeming condition that I had.
Yeah.
Um, and but anyway, throughout the years, like that kind of stuff became less and less, I guess, because there was less catastrophe around not sleeping all night or whatever. It tended to happen less.
Yeah.
Because I was just basically like, oh, well, here we go, whatever. And then I'd sleep some and get on with my life. And I guess the story, I guess that when the years go by, the story just sort of like, it's hard to maintain this. I mean,
Right.
you can't do like this 24/7 panic attack for like 10 years. Like it just doesn't work like that. So
Exactly.
eventually things just, and that's how, but there was a point where like I said with my mom, and then so, that it transitioned from like this sort of like time going by and normalizing the experience and still kind of having some difficulty sleeping, to actually having like direct realizations of like how I was creating it with these like thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. And then I started testing out reality, like, like, oh, well, what if I just forget about this screen time? What if I forget about like sleep hygiene habits? What if I forget about, I don't even need the sleepy tea tonight. Like, I don't need my special, like, magnesium glycinate, glycine, jujube, reishi tonic. Like, forget it. Like, I think I need that every night, but like, what if I don't drink it tonight? And just sort of starting to disregard the rules as an experiment,
Yeah.
and then receiving these results of like, wow, it's starting to seem like the less effort I put into trying to sleep, the easier sleep comes to me. And then it just started becoming clearer and clearer. And then I just started sort of like, you know, emerging out of this self-created,
Yeah.
whatever that was.
Struggle. Yeah. And how for how long of a time did you or have you been on Reddit and just helping people out?
Oh, that was just basically in the last year or two.
Okay.
Just basically just like as a just, I don't know, I guess when you go through a intense experience and you feel like you found the answer or whatever, it just becomes like your duty to be like, or at least for me, I just felt like, well, if I have some insight into this cause of suffering, then even though I'd love to put it behind me and be like, I'm never going to think about this insomnia stuff ever again and just live my life, it's like that becomes like, you can't just like walk away knowing there's all these people out there having an experience of what is happening to me, because there's just this intense why that you cry out with, when you're having this experience, and you go to the doctors and you go to the psychologists and you go to the sleep hygiene and you go to the supplements, because you're just like internally, why? So if I have any capacity to talk to someone and say, this is why, or this is how, then like it or not, that's my karma or my duty for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Not
Yeah.
not to not to you know, judge anybody or put pressure on anybody or anything like that. I fully understand anybody who's like, I'm doing well. I'm gonna leave this space and not think about it and just do my life. Completely understand that, but I have the same sense of like, it's sometimes it seems like it's almost like a responsibility to share things, when it can help others. I recognize that very much. But all right, I would just have maybe two more questions for you. One is, if you could travel back in time to maybe, day 3 of that retreat or something like that, and you could tell yourself something, what would you tell yourself?
I'd probably tell myself, don't sweat it. You can leave this place. You don't have to become an enlightened Buddha master at this moment. Like, feel free to go. And I
Yeah,
probably left.
yeah, that makes sense. The other, actually, I have one question to you, but first, a little, you know, uh, just a thing I thought about, which was that so much of the teachings, I'm not no expert in Buddhism at all, but from what I've gathered and learned, a lot of it is about like non-attachment, effortlessness, let things be. And in some way, although it took a while, it seems like you truly learned those principles from this through this journey. And it's a little bit ironic because you went to this retreat and it taught you this in some way, but in a different way than maybe you'd expect. Have you pondered that at all?
Yeah, it is very interesting that the seeming cause of the affliction was also like the cure in a way, because I did have I was able to reconstruct. It didn't come out of nowhere from the Vipassana retreat. I can go back in time and remember, oh yeah, like that other time I was in a room full of people, um, and I couldn't sleep that night, and kind of like these other instances, I was like, oh, and then I used to be up till 3, 4 in the morning. I remember that. Okay, yeah, and so kind of like being able to know that I was experiencing all this stuff, but like I hadn't construed it as this catastrophic problem. Um, but yeah, your question was, oh yeah, the irony of like the so yeah, basically I untangled at the moment. I thought that the Buddhism was doing this thing to me, and so that was like it put me in this place of like I had misdiagnosed like where the threat was coming from, and I was like, I was living this normal life like before I came to this Vipassana retreat, and now this thing did this thing to me, and then I suffer for years. But like, yeah, it was just basically like this drawn out like thing that led to the I I call it like the gift of insomnia. Like, I mean, and I think that other people have come to this place when they come out the other side of their insomnia journey, or the not the other side meaning that they sleep magically every night, but that they've come to peace in some capacity, is that then that translates to all your so many things about life, and except like surrendering and letting go. And so yeah, it is interesting how Buddhism can address this, and also stoicism in particular as another like sort of philosophy framework of just acceptance, or like these philosophies that become so much more embodied if you can get through like the tough, like it's not like a concept. Like most of my life, like meditation or being in the present moment or being okay with life circumstances and these kind of things, they were just sort of like a philosophical concept, or like this kind of just thought or this idea. But then this experience, what it's done is like it's gotten me into like the meat and bones of it, and into the direct realization of like, oh, I actually get this beyond a conceptual level now, how like sort of like letting go is and surrendering and accepting what is occurring, which is all sort of like, it could be Stoicism or Buddhism or even Christianity or other religions addressing these principles. So anyway, the gift of insomnia and of this whole sort of like Buddhist retreat, which led to the crisis, which led to, it's brought me to this sort of like what feels to me as like a more embodied place, which if I could trade, like, okay, so you never went through this, who knows where I would be in terms of my experience, so it's like the insomnia is like a gift almost, even though it was the most horrific thing that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It still brought this gift.
Yeah, yeah. And you
Yeah.
already answered what was going to be my last question, which was that, did what you learned through this journey help in other aspects of life? And you clearly, share that it can help in every aspect of life, these principles. So, well, let's just conclude there. Curtis, it was so nice getting to meet you, and we'll be in touch. And I'll just say thanks so much for sharing your story with the community. I'm sure so many people will find benefit and help there.
Thanks.
Anytime. Bye now.
Hi there, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone out there who is spreading the word. You know what I've noticed in the last 6 months to 12 months or something like that is when I ask people how they found us, one of the most common answers is somebody told me on Reddit. And every time I hear that, it really warms my heart. It makes me so glad to hear that someone went out of their way to tell a fellow human about the Sleep Coach School. If you're one of those people out there spreading the word, I want to say thank you so, so much. And if you're not, then maybe you'll see an invitation in doing so, or you can simply hit the like button or hit the subscribe button. That alone helps so, so much in getting our teachings out there and helping more and more people in the world. That was all I want to say here. Thanks so much for tuning in, and can't wait to see you again.